I want to ask you one last question. If you could see one thing change, like revolutionize pediatrics, what would it be?
To revolutionise paediatrics, I suppose the thing that would change paediatrics in a way that would make it safer, let's put it that way, is licensing. So we're still at a situation where for every drug that gets licensed, only 14% of them get licensed for paediatrics. And even after 10 years, only up to 25%. And therefore, a lot of what we've been talking about is that working behind a license, I might be licensing adults, but not for paediatrics. That makes it a real unknown. There's a safety issue and a different way of working because of that with so many things. The license isn't everything, therefore it's evidence. There's so much we don't know. And using something in somebody who's 3 months or 3 years or 15 years is different. The data is different. The outcomes are different. The handling is different. And therefore, so much is needed to know. And I guess it's why, probably for the last phase of my career, I have created the Children's Medicine Centre with a hope that we can start digging away at more of the evidence base around medicines. And that's pharmaceutics, pharmacology, it's all of that, use of real-world data. Because it's the one thing which, and you'll know this from palliative, there is so much we don't know. And therefore it's the evidence in some ways. So what would change paediatrics drastically is that evidence base. And an understanding, perhaps within the pharmacy world, of how you talked about people falling into things earlier in their career or having to deal with. Maybe it depends how you want to look at it. In some ways, it's lovely. In other ways, should we be looking at it that early? The criticality of it, the complexity of it, it's the same as adults. So why are we enabling more junior pharmacists to be doing stuff that maybe in adults they wouldn't? And there is still a bit of paediatrics is just another clinical speciality, a bit like doing renal. And of course, it's not. It's a quarter of the population, and absolutely every speciality that there is in adults is a speciality within paediatrics. The neonates are separate. They haven't got those premature neonates. And then you've got fetal medicine, i.e. things which aren't there at all. And so it's a huge field, which is, from a professional point of view, I think is still misinterpreted. So if you've got a paediatric ward, or you need a paediatric pharmacist, but all of those, they will all be different specialities. And so there's that understanding that paediatrics there is no such thing as paediatrics, you could argue. It's a bit like just saying adults. And I think that pharmacy world has got its head around the fact you just can't say, I do adults. On the whole, within secondary care, anyway, it is split into specialities. And paediatrics needs to be seen like that. And if we develop the workforce like that, then the way people, I'm going to say, look into the topics that they're looking at will be more probing. And that's where your research comes from. That's where your answers come from. And so we're lacking workforce, you could argue. So there's two things here, but maybe one leads to the other, is we need a greater workforce. Just because you've only got 3 patients, because the numbers are different. We haven't got the same number of patients, and that's probably why we haven't got the same number of staff. But if you've got 3 patients who are cardiac patients, well, you need the same knowledge base, the same number of guidelines, the same number of everything else as you do if you've got 100 patients. You can't just say, hold on, we haven't got many patients, therefore one person can do all of that lot just because it's paediatrics. And therefore, that whole understanding of what paediatrics is from outside of paediatrics, I think it's still getting there. And the big centres are gathering. You've got a palliative care, but it is about probing and trying to get those posts. It's not as flowing as adults is at the moment in terms of understanding how many specialities there are and the fact that you need a different mindset for each of them if you're going to look at it as a speciality. And that leads to the research base, I think, and people really asking probing questions and then developing it. So it's why I'm going the route I'm going, but I think they're the bits which are going to affect paediatrics the most.